The third day he rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From thence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. In the Eastern Church, there's a beautiful custom, which has been adopted by some of us Westerners, of replacing the normal words of greeting, hello, good morning, and so forth, with what is called the Paschal or the Easter greeting, from Easter to Pentecost. In Greek, it is Christos Anesti. And in English, it is Christ is risen, with the response, he is risen indeed. For 50 days, every time you greet someone, the reality and the immediacy of the resurrection is celebrated. The fact that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, is not left at the church door on Easter Day. Some of you may say this on your churches on the Sundays after Easter. So keep that phrase in mind, and let me tell you a couple of stories. So story number one. I was once taking a class in college. It was one of those classes that no one, including the professor, wanted to be in. We got into a conversation about Jesus and the resurrection. And the conversation just sort of abruptly ended when someone, a person who was preparing for ordained ministry in another church, piped up that it didn't really matter if Jesus was raised from the dead or not, or even if he existed, because we still had his moral teachings. We still had the Sermon on the Mount and the parables and so forth. At the time, it bothered me, but I didn't understand how to respond. All I knew was that it made me sad. So story number two. Just after Easter of this year, the president of a seminary in New York City made a very similar claim, except that she came right out and said that she didn't believe in the resurrection, and then said she didn't believe in prayer, miracles, or the virgin birth either. She went on to say that the crucifixion was just a metaphor for human cruelty, and that she couldn't believe in a God who would let his son die on the cross. But what does Scripture say? But if there be no resurrection of the dead, then is Christ not risen? And if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, and your faith is also vain, says St. Paul. There's a church historian and theologian named Yaroslav Pelikan who put it another way. He said, if Christ is risen, then nothing else matters. And if Christ is not risen, then nothing else matters. When someone takes the resurrection out of Christianity, what they do is they gut the Christian faith. Now they may think that they're making Christianity accessible or approachable, or that often overused word, relevant. But without the resurrection, our faith is reduced to a shell, and it ends up just being the principle, be nice to each other. But while Jesus wants us to be nice and kind and loving to each other, that's not the only reason he came. Because he came to live and die as one of us and to conquer the grave. The Father sent his Son to be with us. Jesus, the Word, was made flesh and dwelt among us. He offered himself on the cross for our sake, in our place. And on the third day, on that first Easter day, the Word, Jesus of Nazareth, took that flesh out of the grave, and he broke death's back. Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and Satan and death are defeated. As in Adam all die, so in Christ shall all be made alive. The tomb is empty. Christ is risen. And that is truly good news.